Happy holidays, Jets fans. Welcome back to another video here on Peg City Hockey. Now, we're at the 30-game mark. The holiday break has already started, and I think it's about time that we talk about some of the performances on our team this year and how the players have been doing. So what I've decided to do is that over the next 5 days, I'm going to be dropping top 5 player report cards for the Winnipeg Jets. So basically, to sum that up, the top 5 Winnipeg Jets so far at the 30-game mark of the 2021-2022 season. We're going to go over their stats compared to last year, the improvements, a little bit of the advanced stats as well, and also just how they've meshed if they are new acquisitions or their development as players since coming to the Winnipeg Jets. So if you haven't already subscribed, regardless of the team that you root for, definitely do so, and let's jump right into this. So the number 5 spot, we're going to go from 5 to 1, is going to start off with a recently acquired defenseman from the Vancouver Canucks, and that is my boy, Nate Schmidt. Now, honestly, I think Nate Schmidt is the best acquisition this team has acquired in a trade, probably since the Jacob Trouba and Neil Pionk swap. When that was made, people were a little skeptical at the time. When you look at it now, we have Ville Heinola and Neil Pionk on a really good contract compared to Jacob Trouba, who has kind of just been mediocre in his time with the New York Rangers, as well as being massively overpaid. But I think this Nate Schmidt trade is a little bit better. And I will explain why, and obviously not comparing both players because they're kind of different, and one being an offensive defenseman, one being more of a two-way guy. But I really think that when you look at Nate Schmidt, what we paid to bring him in on a guy already on a long-term who waived a no-trade clause to come here, and we only gave up a third-round pick to Vancouver after he had a lull year last year. When you look at last year, in 54 games played with the Vancouver Canucks, he was able to put up 5 goals, 10 assists for 15 points. A very lackluster campaign coming from the guy that had double the amount of points in 6 extra games, 59 games, 7 goals, 24 assists, 31 points with the Vegas Golden Knights in 2019-20, obviously before the season was paused with the COVID and going into the playoffs, having a pretty good year, traded to Vancouver for a third-round pick, doesn't work out, then is flipped for another third-round pick to the Winnipeg Jets, and has been stellar so far to start this 2021-22 campaign. In 29 games played with the Winnipeg Jets, he's acquired 1 goal, 16 assists for 17 points, already passing his point total from last year in 54 games. Obviously, you'd like to see that goal margin been taken up, but I really think where Nate Schmidt's kind of been the biggest key to this team has not been his offensive production, even though, like I said, 16 points and 1 goal in 29 games is pretty awesome. I gotta say, I really think that Nate Schmidt's biggest, boost to this team has been his presence with Josh Morrissey. When you look at Josh Morrissey the last couple of seasons, he has struggled immensely. He was never the real number 1 option on this D-core when we went to the Western Conference Final run. Let me take you back in time to 2018. You had Dustin Byfuglien, Tyler Myers, Jacob Trouba, a really good budding Ben Sherratt as a bottom pair defenseman. And then you had Josh Morrissey, a really good top 4 guy, a really good partner with Jacob Trouba on that second pair, arguably first pair that the Jets would roll out. You lose everybody in that top 4 except Josh Morrissey. He is burdened with taking on an entire D-core of guys that probably aren't even NHL quality when you look back at some of the defensemen that we've iced, especially looking at Anthony Bitetto. I love the guy, but come on, let's be real. He had a lot on his shoulders. He couldn't really handle that load. His offensive production went down. His defensive stats went down. He just wasn't the same player that he was in the past. Nate Schmidt has been a great addition to Josh Morrissey and this D-core and has really helped bring Morrissey back to where he was when this team was at its most dominant peak back in the 2017-18 season when we made that run to the Western Conference Final. When you look at Josh Morrissey now, I think there's a really good quote from Nate Schmidt that kind of describes their relationship. Josh Morrissey doesn't do any talking, and Nate Schmidt does all the talking. Now, obviously, I kind of butchered that quote, but because I'm not going to say it as I'm Nate Schmidt, but that is very, very true. You got 2 sides of the coin that are very different, but very similar, that work really well together. And obviously, the defense this year hasn't been perfect. It's been a learning curve for all of the acquisition players brought in, including Brendan Dillon, and the new pairs, the new style of play, a coaching change to boot. But I really think that Nate Schmidt has been amazing for the Winnipeg Jets when you look at what he brings, the energy he has, and also just the presence, like I said, with shoring up Josh Morrissey. I really don't think a lot of us Jets fans see the value in Josh Morrissey as much as we should this season, because we were talking about last year how he could be on one of the worst contracts in the entire NHL at that $6 million cap hit for, I believe, another 6 more years, or maybe 7 years. Either way, it's a long time. He has kind of rebounded this year. I don't have Josh Morrissey's stats up, even though I should, but he has been a really big stud back there defensively for us. He hasn't been perfect, but he is definitely significantly improved, and that is something that I think a lot of Jets fans don't really see and appreciate as much as they should, and Nate Schmidt is the main culprit for that improvement. He's helped this team in that top 4 kind of shore up a little bit. Is he an amazing all-star? Absolutely not. I had to put him at the 5 spot because I really think that his presence there on that blue line has shored everything up. Now you don't have Neil Pionk having to pick up as much offensive production because Josh Morrissey has that side of his game back. Obviously, like I said, 17 points in 29 games for a defenseman is pretty damn good as well, especially when he's the second pairing guy. You could argue, compared to what the top pairing is, obviously, with Dillon and Pionk. I still think that even though it's struggled as a pairing, has been our probably best, Pionk is still our best defenseman, but Nate Schmidt as a whole has been so collectively important to this team and their defensive identity and the improvements that we've seen that I just don't think that I could, look past his abilities with this club. He's really elevated us, and I think that for a main portion of that is because he's such a good fit with this team, a good locker room guy. I know I'm not really about that whole locker room veteran thing. I'm more about what you show on the ice, but when you show good production on the ice and are a really good presence in the locker room, it's the best of both worlds. He's literally yin-yang with Josh Morrissey and that defensive core, and I think it's been a really big boost to this team. He's not obviously the best defenseman or the most important defenseman, but I think you could argue that he is kind of the glue in the gel that's making the defense work right now. He's helped Josh Morrissey rebound, as well as in fact that we paid a 3rd-round pick for a top 4 defenseman who's had an amazing rebound year compared to who it was last year. People thought when that Schmidt trade was made, it was very, very risky. Me as a Canucks fan who lives out in Vancouver, I saw a lot of that Schmidt play with the Canucks, and I also saw a lot of him play against Vegas, obviously a team as well in the Pacific. I never thought that he was a good fit in Vancouver. I even thought when that trade was made, I'm like, okay, this could really backfire on the Canucks. A 3rd-round pick is a cheap price, don't get me wrong, but when you have a guy that needs to kind of be a number 1 or a number 2, when you already have Quinn Hughes, a Tyler Myers, and now you have an Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well this season, imagine if they catch Schmidt, it just would have been even worse for them, as well as that contract. You're paying him to kind of be a number 2 for you, but when he's not a number 2 for you, obviously, and playing more like a 4, you can't have a guy making that much money. He's been a really good acquisition for the Jets. I would say he's probably been, when you look at our depth chart, I would say he's probably number 2 behind Josh Morrissey. I really do like Neil Pionk as his whole game, but as a pairing and everything else that's kind of happened there, I think that really Schmidt has kind of solidified himself as being a huge part of this team and their identity and what they bring defensively, offensively, how they join in the rush, and I just really appreciate and am glad and really grateful that we have acquired a defenseman that was on a 3rd-round pick only, who has term left and is playing like a good top 4 defenseman, help Josh Morrissey rebound, and just solidify this team a little bit more defensively for the future. And hopefully that'll help us make a deep playoff run if we can get out of this rut that we're in and hopefully exceed to getting back into that fight for a playoff spot in the Central Division. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below as always. How have you been feeling about Nate Schmidt this season? Do you like the trade? Do you want someone else? Let me know your thoughts about him down in the comment section below as well. Guys, let me know who you think is going to be number 4 on my top 5 list so far for the Winnipeg Jets 2021-2022 report cards for the, about, like I said, the 30% mark. I don't know. I just wanted to do this because I feel like we have a lot of Jets that have been really good, even though the season has kind of been a disappointment to start so far, and I think it's time to show those guys appreciation. So with all that being said, drop a like if you haven't already, subscribe if you're new, and regardless of the team that you root for, peace, love, and positivity. Have a great rest of your day, and go Jets, go!